Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Solutions with Courtney Anderson. I am your show host, guide, and narrator, Courtney Anderson. And this is being taped, this episode, on the first day of 2014. I feel it would be remiss not to memorialize that momentous and exciting and literally once-in-a-lifetime occasion, January 1st, 2014. I must say that I'm always amazed and grateful when a new year rolls around, and I often sit and reflect and think, first, wow, I didn't think that, who would have thought that I'd still be around to see 2014? And I'm grateful. And when I was doing sort of a mental end of the year countdown at the end of 2013, I know so many people focus on looking forward and the idea you're going to make the resolution, you're going to, get the perfect body and the perfect job and the perfect, romantic relationship and the perfect hobby and all those things. But I took some time to really sit down and think about the end of 2013, and of course, initially, I went to sort of the things that I didn't like about 2013 and the things that caused me either, disappointment or hurt or something, negative. And then I really did consciously stop myself, and I said, look, what are some of the things that happened that were, pretty awesome in 2013? And there were actually quite a few. And not that anyone beyond sort of, the individual, they're not that big of a deal, but, stuff from, I brought a new dog into my family. I brought my beautiful Pomeranian, Victor. I adopted him in this summer. He was about 6 months old from the local shelter here in the Las Vegas area, and he's been a delight and a handful. And I've never had two dogs before. I already had my beautiful Chihuahua, and I have never had a puppy before. So it was a lot to learn, and that's one of those things, again, that nobody cares about other than the individual, but in my world, it's a big thing. And, a lot of wonderful work things took place in 2013. I'm just incredibly grateful. Some very just exciting opportunities in my teaching at the University of Maryland, University College, where I actually joined them in a full-time appointment at the very end of 2013, which is very exciting for me, very exciting. And I was also honored to be nominated for and recognized with a teaching award. In my private businesses, I had a very fruitful year. Even in my volunteer work as an attorney here in the Las Vegas area, I've taken some cases working with children who are in foster care, representing them as their lawyer, and it's been good. I think I've met some wonderful people, and it's been good for me to use my skills as an attorney in a manner where it's not for profit, where I'm just giving my time and my resources and giving my best effort. So many wonderful things happened in 2013, and I forced myself to stop and I sort of started down as sort of, lamenting, good riddance to 2013. I have never done, don't let the door hit you on your way out, 2013. But the reality is, there were some stressful things that did cause some growing pains and some learning opportunities. Some work-related, some personal, but I have to say overall, there were some things I'll remember, and I finally completed a master's degree, a master's of science that I'd started taking credits years ago, but I have to pick up around all my other work, and I finally cobbled together all of my credits and had completed my comprehensive exam. And so one of the universities that's part of the Texas A&M university system, one of their campuses, Tarleton State University, I was awarded in August my Master's of Science, my MS. So that was my fourth college degree. I have my undergrad, my BA, I've got an MBA, I have my Doctor of Jurisprudence, my JD, and now I have my MS. And the MS was a challenge because I had to fit it in around everything else. So I'm proud of that. And those are the kind of things that 2013 left a good impression. And hopefully however long I live, I'll look back and be proud of a lot of the great things that happened and a lot of the things that I've learned from. Hopefully they'll result in me growing as a person and making better choices. So that's the Dear Diary part of my personal reflection on the year, but wider than just sort of, here's what happened to me and I did this at work and got a dog and did this other thing. It's really about the idea of the topic of our show, which is be careful what you pretend to be, because you are what you pretend to be. And, this is a quote from Kurt Vonnegut, who just is, one of the authors that you just want to read because, in my personal opinion, you're on the planet, and I think it's just a joy and a pleasure to be here. And I made the analogy in another show, and I've made it in other programs and events, that to me, being alive and being here, it's like getting a ticket to some, really great, amusement park, right? And the amusement park's huge. Most of these things are just, they're gargantuanly large. You look at the little map when you get to a big amusement park or a big theme park, and you think, man, look at all this, it's a lot of walking, right? But the point is, there's so much to see, and you feel overwhelmed. Like, I can't see all this stuff. What? But you paid all this money, right, to get in. You had this ticket, and it cost, and you had to wait in line. And, if you were in one of the big, huge theme parks around the world, you're often there, and it's hot, and it's summer perhaps, and it's crowded, and you think, man, I'm out this money, and I stood in line, I'm already tired, and you get the map, and you look at the map, and you think, there's no way I'm going to be able to see everything in this park. Like, are you crazy? And part of that is, that's why they design it like that, right? Because you spend so much hassle and money, and they want you to be, overwhelmed with all these options, and they want you to feel like, wow, this is totally worth it. And I think, and this is my, analogy for whatever it's worth, I think life's kind of like that. You look at the globe and you just think, golly, it's so big. There's so much to see. And even, myself, I get on planes sometimes, and I love when I'm on a plane, like a long-haul international flight, like you're going from the States to South Africa, or the States to India, or the States to Australia, or, vice versa, whatever. And you're on these massively long flights, and so they almost always have that little option on your little screen where you can click and watch your plane, on the map of the world, sort of flying over all these countries. And I'm such an enthusiastic person about life. I can watch that for hours. And I know that sounds really weird, but on a 14-hour, 45-minute flight, which is what the flight is from Newark Airport in New Jersey to Mumbai, India, you got a lot of time. And I've been on longer flights, though. I think the longest I've flown was the Atlanta, in the U.S., Atlanta Hartsfield Airport to Cape Town, South Africa, and I think total it's like 16 hours and something. But they do land to in the middle, like for gas, and I think to do a crew change. But so I've done some long haul flights, and I think it's exciting to look on that map and see your little plane and just like look at the globe and like, wow, it seems sometimes to me when you look at it, like I can't go all these places and do all this stuff. And then when you get out there a little bit, yeah, you're not going to be able to go everywhere probably, but you can do a lot. And it's the same thing at an amusement park, right? I can't ride every ride. A personal note for me, if you ever do go to a theme park with me or see me at one, I'm a water ride person. I do water rides first, especially when it's hot. Meaning if there's a log water ride, anything with water in it, I want to do that first, and then I want to do roller coasters. Although the roller coasters, I have a fear of heights, so my personal method, I just close my eyes because the sensation on the roller coaster doesn't scare me. It's just when I have my eyes open and I feel like now I have a visual element, but the sensation I think is kind of fun, and the wind in my hair and whatnot, and that's what I do, right? So I prioritize. And it's the same thing in life. We have to prioritize. We can't do it all. There's too much. But we can do a lot of it, and we can do more than we think we can do. And so that's part of what the bigger hope beyond just sort of me, look at all what I did in 2013 is to serve you, is to, think about these things. yeah, there's always horrible things that happen or things that disappoint you, and that's all of us. But it's a choice to be here. I did a show recently about acknowledging that, when people get to a point and feel I can't go on. Yeah, you can. People persevere through all kinds of things, cancer or horrible, atrocities or whatever, war. So it's a choice to be here. We have our ticket. We're in the park. Yes, there's a lot to see. We can't see it all. But I think it's helpful to change that framework and that narrative where you start to think, okay, you know what? I am here. And instead of me standing here and complaining, right, about, oh, it's so hot, there's so many people, the line is too long. You know what? I never understand people who do that. It's a theme park. And there's a lot of people that want to go see stuff too. So the lines are long. And if it's in, a city that's in a hot part of the globe and you're there in the hot season, then yeah, it's hot. You knew that though. But instead of being grateful that you're there, all you do is, while you're in the park, you stand there and complain about all the stuff that is so evident. Like, we get it. And it's the same thing in life, right? You're on a long-haul plane, or you go to some place you've never been, and you just start complaining constantly about, oh, it's not like at home, or I can't believe this. You're wasting all your time, and your admission is limited. At the theme park, your ticket's only good for so long. And in life, at some level, in the person you are, in the form you are right now, there's general agreement that, to the best of our knowledge, that this experience of this life as it is now, I'm not talking metaphysical or spiritual or anything of that nature, is limited, and that we don't know how long. So my argument is that, one, when you sort of are framing your narrative and deciding what are you going to do with your life, right? I'm always focusing how you're going to surpass your goals. But when you're looking at what are you going to do with your life, I think you need to change kind of the context, because there are people who spend the whole time complaining. There are other people who go to a theme park. I know them, and they won't ride any of the rides because they're, quote, scared. And they just sit and complain, and they won't go anywhere and look at anything in the theme park because, quote, it's too hot. And I just sort of feel like, well, why did you even come? What's the point then? If you're not going to experience anything or do anything and just stand around and complain, then you could have done that like at your house on your couch. And I feel that way. And I feel sad because I think they are wasting an opportunity. And our topic, again, comes from Kurt Vonnegut, who is, I was making the point that if you're not somebody who is a big reader or consumer of or literature, I strongly encourage you to maybe explore that a little bit more. It's, again, to me, it's like analogous to being at the theme park, but because you don't want to read anything or learn about history or world events or other cultures, you're missing out on so much. And it's not an either or. It's not like, oh, well, I don't want to read some person on some list of important authors or poets or go to some museum when I'd rather watch reality TV or play video games. You can do all of that. I watch mindless television and you can also learn about the world. You can do all of it, right? It's like being at the theme park. You can do the water ride, and you can eat, cotton candy, and you can ride the roller coaster, and you can sit on a bench and complain about your feet hurting. You can do all of it. It's not either or. But by limiting your knowledge, you miss out on so much of what's going on. You don't have a context for the world, and you also limit your ability to generate original ideas. And so that's why you read other people. And if someone is lauded as an author, a poet, a historian, anything, it doesn't hurt you to learn about it. And I mean, and I'm going to say this, and again, this is in this context and not in any other context that I would ever say this, but if you're just general knowledge, it's not going to hurt you to start, go on Wikipedia or some open access, encyclopedia, just read a little bit, just so that you understand, oh, okay, I've heard that name before. I didn't know what it was. Now I do. Look it up. Look it up. So the idea of this quote is, be careful what you pretend to be, because you are what you pretend to be. And I think this is just rather profound. So many people, we pretend to be all kinds of things. The negative part of me sometimes, in some of the work I've done, I've seen the ugly, I was going to call it underbelly, but I don't think it is. I think there's a lot that goes on in people's real lives that they put on sort of a public face or a public mask, which is appreciated, right? Like, I'm glad that the people who abuse their children or who are violent at home, pull it together outside of that and act like they're normal at the grocery store, because it saves them from attacking me and makes my life easier. But as a lawyer, as a person who's and I've done criminal law and family law and probate, and I've just seen almost all of it, and it's ugly. And in my own personal life, I've seen some, real ugly, painful, horrible things. And sometimes it skews my thinking, and I'll think, well, that's kind of how it all is. And that's not rational, right? That's black-white thinking. That's thinking it's all or nothing. And that's not accurate. It's absolute. Black-white thinking is what I just said, which is something I work in progress. I really struggle with this because I do tend to see bright lines in life. It is or it isn't. And it takes you to the sort of absolute, right? It's all or nothing. Everybody behind closed doors, it's all a sham out in society. Well, now I sound like, I'm Catcher in the Rye, right? I'm just railing against the fakeness. And another book, if you haven't read it or read it recently, pick it up again, right? There's a reason why Salinger and Catcher in the Rye it's on all the little lists to read in high school or college, is because the reason I'm suggesting you do this, to engage in broadening your intellectual horizons, are there people who've come, either they're alive right now when we're alive, or they were alive before, and they've either thought something or been able to express things in a way that was so unique that it was recognized by the society, and that's a big deal for all the people that have ever lived. That someone's on a list of you should read that book or read that poem or see that painting. That's just so rare statistically that you probably should, even if it's just a cursory Wikipedia or something, figure out why is it mentioned? What's it worth? And the more you sort of take that in, it kind of allows you like a superhero, right? To kind of pull from all of this sort of amazing work that's gone before you, and then put it in your own brain and process it, and who knows what you can do with it. At a minimum, it's going to expand the way that you think about things and expand your own individual journey here. So I encourage you to read and to think. And I also encourage you, as I was sharing, when you're looking at your own thoughts, what types of things are you doing to sabotage? A personal struggle for me is the black-white thinking. I just go to that so often, right? And it's not accurate. Not everyone is pretending. Now, a lot of people pretend. Many of us pretend things that are, rather benign, right? Like I'll be a little bit, more patient in public than it might be if I'm sitting on my couch at home, where I'm immediately, turning the channel, on that TV. I'm not patient. I'm at home, but in society, I'm online, so I'll wait, and I'm a little bit more patient, depending on where you are. Some parts of the world, if the culture is that you don't wait patiently, but you sort of get in there and push, you need to get in there and push with the group. Okay, remember, cultural norm. So I asked you to think about this concept, that if you do pretend, it doesn't mean it's a negative, right? It doesn't mean it's a good or bad thing. It just means I'm asking you to acknowledge if you're doing it. And the really, I think, helpful part of this concept is you have to think that whatever it is that you put out there, whatever mask you put on, and maybe that mask is just literally that, you're a little bit cleaner, and you brush your teeth and smell nice before you go out in the world, which is greatly appreciated. Understand that other people only know that image. That's all they see, because they don't know what's going on in your head, right? And they don't know what goes on in your secret private place. So whatever it is that you're out there pretending to be, that's what they think you are. On a positive side, again, these can be benign, right? Like people think you're a little nicer than you are, right? They don't know that in your head you're thinking, oh, what an idiot, right? But on your face, you're just sort of like, oh, interesting. So they think that you're nice, even though maybe you thought a bad thought. It's not necessarily a negative thing. But there are times in our lives when it's incredibly destructive. We've put so much time and energy into some sort of facade and pretend, avatar, shall we say, of like who we are, that people lose themselves in this stuff. And you see it whenever you hear a story about somebody who's like, the person was in their life and they, maybe had a job or a family, and they just up and disappeared. And it wasn't because they were kidnapped or anything. They just wanted to get out of that life. They just couldn't take it anymore. And sometimes they'll literally just disappear. They don't tell anybody they're leaving, and they just, go to a new country or change their name or whatever. Sometimes they'll go to more elaborate lengths to just sort of hide. And I'm not, these aren't people who are like criminals or trying to hide from something. But what happens is sort of we construct these narratives, right? And they're for all types of reasons. And again, so many programs and things that we're putting forward, and I'm, again, work in progress, student of all this too, to try to determine better, where does this stuff come from? Why do I think I should pretend to be this thing? Or why do I have the desire or perceived need to pretend to be this thing? Whether it's the perfect mother or the perfect, friend, I never say no, or, I'm the best boss, everyone likes me. Whatever sort of character it is, why you want to be that is a whole nother question, which I'm fascinated by. But what this is, the purpose of this episode is to sort of introduce the concept that, one, more likely than not, most of us are doing some level of pretending. Now, there's some people who don't do any pretending, right? Like, if they don't believe in using deodorant or, too much bathing, that's how they live, and they live like that real all the time. I knew several people throughout my life that I've met who are serious, and they are not going to, put up this fake person. They're just going to be real all the time. And you know what? Hey, if it works for you, it works, right? And some people sometimes will make fun of somebody like that, like, oh, they're so pompous, or, but the desire to be authentic, to be like a real person and not feel like you're playing a role is powerful. And there's so many negative things that can happen to us as humans when we get into sort of a process of starting to feel like we're just pretending to be some person we're not. And it's quite common. And again, you see it in professional settings all the time, right? Somebody's, decided that they're going to be like this, tough boss because they're petrified and worried that nobody really trusts them, and they're insecure. And so they go in the office and they think that they're going to be tough and strong, but really they're, they are abusive, right? I mean, oh my goodness. I've seen so many horrible things that people do at work. In their head, I think that they're trying to pretend to be, quote, strong, but they come off, of course, as weak and abusive and petty, and they, do all sorts of destructive, verbally insulting their team members and setting up some sort of culture of insecurity and fear. And they do this, I think they're trying in their head to project this idea, right? Like, I want people to think I'm strong, even though I'm scared and I'm weak, and so I'm pretending to be strong, but because I'm not really there's no uniformity in my thoughts and my behavior, right? So I put out this idea that I got to be strong, but it comes across as, being cruel or being belittling or being abusive. And people do it in their personal lives, and what a destruction in their personal life. I meet people. And again, a lot of this is I have to think about the setting, right? So if I'm at the courthouse, volunteering on a family law clinic, or where people can come in the public and just sort of ask questions of a lawyer, and I've done that in Texas and in Nevada, then yeah, I'm going to meet people with problems. That's why they're at the courthouse talking to a free lawyer, doing the free lawyer clinic. They're not like, going about their business, happy, regular contentment. I mean, there's a problem. That's why they're there. And I hear the most horrible thing, and people feel trapped. Right? The main argument is they made decisions, and sometimes I don't even think they know why. Whether it was to enter into a relationship or a marriage, or even honestly, sometimes to have children, and they're trapped and they don't want to be that. They don't want to do that. They were pretending that that's what they wanted, but they really aren't. And you even hear it where you don't hear it so much now, but in generations past, where people would pretend due to societal pressures and even legal issues. So there would be people who would, for instance, be a minority group member. They were born into a family and they're, were black or African American, but they, due to the biology, they came out looking like they could pass. So they were black, but they're very, light and fair complexion, and so they would go out in the world and they would pretend like they weren't black because they could get away with it. And in my own family, they had a really interesting article a couple of years ago. Some relative, a reporter, went and did some kind of family history for a relative of mine that was prominent, and they wrote about parts of our extended, family that people sort of left part part of the country and moved to the West in the U.S., and they passed. They just pretended they were white, and they just kept doing that. And you see it in all different other types of, groups that are either, out of power groups or religious groups, people trying to pass. That creates all kind of mental issues because, again, there's such a conflict. Like in your heart, you feel like I am this thing, but I'm pretending to be this other thing, and maybe for legitimate reasons, right? There were laws and all types of consequences, and you've seen it in more recent history in some parts of the world, which hopefully less and less of. Someone might be a certain gender identity or a certain have a sexual orientation, and again feel that they have to pretend, and not again without reason due to some of the same type of laws and discrimination and power dynamics in society, but it almost always results in this very detrimental mental result. You get this bad outcome, right? Because inside you feel like, oh, this is who I am. This is like the real me. But then you're out pretending to be this other thing, and then think you are that thing, and it creates all this conflict, and people, feel that they're frauds, and then they oversimplifying as we have to all the time, and I make a lot of caveats in speeches and in programs because I always feel like, I don't have the time and the resources to make everything, the level of academic and rigor and research that I'd like to. So I just often am kind of, big picture, or even, relying on an anecdote for sort of context. But I understand that that's not, rigorous data. Like I get that, so I'll make these caveats. But the big issue is this: if the core of so much of this is how you perceive yourself, right? So if you really like yourself, you think you're a person who has worth in the world, you think you're a valuable person, then it's much easier to get out there and treat other people well and engage in all this, sort of positive, work on surpassing your goals. If the core of you in your head thinks you don't deserve value, you don't deserve love, you don't deserve professional academic success, then it's incredibly difficult because you're in your head sabotaging yourself all the time. Which brings up this statistic that I just recently found, and we're doing an upcoming show on, that I think is, if it's valid, it's incredibly sort of awesome and awful at the same time. So on the show description, and certainly if you come to CourtneyAnderson.com or anywhere, look on the show, I have this quote here from the Laboratory of Neuroimaging at UCLA, University of California, Los Angeles. So here we go. It says, how many thoughts does the average person have per day? Right? How many thoughts does the average person have per day? And I just think this is a great question. How many thoughts do we have per day, right? Because again, big picture, what we're trying to do is sort of get in that thought process and change it. Because if it's not working for us and we're not getting good outcomes, if I think I'm a horrible idiot, and then I go to work and I'm in my head saying you're a horrible idiot, and then I'm going to speak up at the meeting and try to encourage people to, follow my project idea, it's not happening because I'm telling myself you're a horrible idiot before I even open my mouth. So how will I convince other people to believe something I don't believe? Now, some people can do this, but typically that's because they might have a mental condition where they don't actually think they're a loser. Maybe they like a sociopathic type personality. They can just say and pretend anything, but that's because there's no conflict there. It's not like they think they're a loser and then they go out and try to get other people to believe them. They are agnostic on that. They're just like, they don't feel anything. So they don't have a conflict when they lie because they're not feeling like there's some sort of inauthentic behavior. But the question is, how many thoughts does the average person have per day? And the answer, according to the UCLA Laboratory of Neuroimaging, is 70,000. 70,000. 70,000 thoughts per day. Wow. And like I said, we're doing an upcoming show on that because if you have 70,000 thoughts per day, and let's just assume that this is accurate for the sake of this discussion at this juncture, that's a lot of work to change. Because you'd have to, can you individually change each of the 70,000 thoughts? There's a lot of work in there. So when we talk about confronting who we pretend to be, it's not easy. I encourage you to join in at CourtneyAnderson.com. I thank you so much for being part of this, the first day of 2014, and I wish you the best.